Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love creative people. I think art and creativity make life worth living, make the tough times bearable, and we need their stuff more than ever now, but it's also harder for people sometimes to get their stuff out there, so I like to support it. Today, my guest has quite a story to tell. Her name is Kellie Maloney, and she's the subject of the new documentary Knockout Blonde, the Kellie Maloney Story. It is a documentary about Kellie's life before transitioning when she was Frank Maloney, a very successful boxing manager from England. She took Lennox Lewis all the way to the top and then transitioned and decided to live her truth, and this is her story of that journey. The documentary came to video on demand last month, and I highly recommend it. But before we get to the interview, I want to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by me. I do it because I love it. I find it meaningful. I think it matters to support people that are telling stories, especially queer people. And there are a few ways you can support it, though, if you appreciate it. The best one is to join my new Substack/Patreon, Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay. It's a bonus episode of the podcast with a little bit of a twist. I've become very interested in the science of happiness, or just the idea of happiness, in the last few years. And so one session of this bonus podcast is about that. Different tips and tools and things that I've learned, musings, if you will, on that topic. And then there's other pop culture-y stuff in there as well. Sometimes some clips from the interviews end up in there. So it's really fun. I'm enjoying doing it. You can go to either Substack or Patreon and search Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay. It's $5 a month. I put out an episode every week. And for June right now, all of the content is free. So you can check it out. And eventually I will have a mix of free and paid content. But for now, it's all free because that's how I'm feeling. It's Pride Month. Let's be free. The other thing you can do is become a subscriber to DNR Studios. I'm part of the Derek and Romaine family. And if you subscribe to their DNR Studios app, you can get my show early and all these other great gay shows. So you can learn about that at dnrstudios.com. All right, enough of the plugs. Here now is the interview with Kellie Maloney. Joining me now from Portugal, where I may move before the end of this call, it's Kellie Maloney, the subject of the new documentary Knockout Blonde. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
In the movie, we see a beautiful place where you're living, and I'm like, where is that? That doesn't look like the UK. I'm like, where is that? And it turns out it's Portugal. Yeah?
It's the Algarve, yeah. I had a house in the UK,
yeah.
So I sort of go between the two, but my heart's in England.
Yep.
And my passion's in England, but my heart's in Portugal.
Oh, I like it. I like it. I have a friend that just moved there. I know a lot of Americans are moving there. Do you see them around?
Yeah, I actually had a friend that worked at Fort Lauderdale, and he came over with his partner to have a look at, and I showed him all around because he wants to move. He's due for retirement, and he was one of the first people that took me to America to do a speaking tour.
Fantastic.
And we made great friendship.
I love that. What was it like to come to the U.S. and do a tour and talk about your experience?
Well, I spent a lot of time in the U.S. in my boxing life. So
right.
I quite like America. I love depending on what state you're in, America's like, every state's like a country within a country, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's so different. I mean, my last speaking tour was in Wisconsin, and that was really different to what I've experienced in other parts of America. It was on an Indian reservation, a casino, and it was about trans welfare and trans well-being. And, I learned a lot talking to like some of the Indian psychologists that were on campsite. I think you learn a lot by traveling and going to different parts of the world. I love traveling. I'm not afraid to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I've even gone to places where we're not welcome, if they know. But because I travel under a different name to Maloney, I took my mother's maiden name because when I first transitioned, I was being inundated with photographers, press following me everywhere, follow me to the airport, find out what I was on. So I decided to, though though I love my name Maloney, I decided to take my mother's maiden name and all my documents and everything. So I changed it by default. And it did help me for a while, but then they discovered that. But I'm glad to say now, the interest in me has sort of died a bit.
Yeah.
But it's coming back a bit because of the problems that are going on in the UK at the moment.
Right. I wanted to ask you about that. It must be, I find it heartbreaking. It must be incredibly heartbreaking to have this moment, both in the US and the UK, where people seem to be scapegoated, trans people, and it's horrible.
Well, it seems, I transitioned. I publicly came out in 2014, and I was just before Caitlyn Jenner, actually, and
she copied you. She's trying to horn in on your act.
Yeah, no, she's listen, we're two different people,
right? And
I often get asked about her in England. They say, "Oh, you're the English answer to Caitlyn Jenner," and I go, "No, Caitlyn Jenner lives in an aquarium. Kellie Maloney in a goldfish bowl," and they sort of, "Oh, you're." I go, "No, we're completely different people, and we have different views and everything."
Right.
Similar view. We may support certain views on certain things that I watch what she puts out. I actually watch what most people put out on the trans community.
Yeah.
And I watch what the anti-trans brigade put out, so that I'm well averse of what's going on, and I can stay, because I still do public speaking and corporate speaking.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
What do you make of this moment in the UK?
I think we're actually, I don't know why, but every country seems to become very nationalist now.
Yeah.
Where before we used to welcome people, and the right wing are getting very powerful.
Yeah.
And I think the UK, for some unknown reason, seems to be following Donald Trump's guidelines on all these issues, because trans people are human people. Yeah. Let's not get carried away. I didn't want to transition. I had a great life as Frank Maloney,
Yeah.
I was treated like a king everywhere I went. But there was an inner side of me that I couldn't control.
Yeah.
That was destroying me, was destroying my life, destroying my family. Yeah. And I had to make that decision. Otherwise, I probably would be laying 6 foot under the ground with a tombstone now.
Yeah. There's a moment in the documentary where you talk about people are always saying you're so brave. And you said, it's not bravery. It's the choice between I either am true to myself or I'm dead. Like there's no other choice. And I've heard other people I've interviewed echo that same thing, that it feels like I'm either true to myself or I check the fuck out of this place. Yeah.
You come to a point in life where you have to be honest. I could have gone on living a lie, but no one saw the sadness in my eye. I can see it now. I look at pictures of Frank. Even at the times when Lennox was at his greatest glory and I was standing beside him, my eyes were dead. I look at pictures of Kellie just being me, and my eyes are alight, and my face, I'm happy, and there's joy in myself. I haven't got the same lifestyle I had before.
Yeah.
But I've got a happy lifestyle now. I've got a contented lifestyle. And do you know what? I'm a better parent than I used to be. So I get my daughters tell me.
That's lovely to hear. I love that. In what ways?
I don't know. They just say to me, you're so much more approachable.
Yeah.
You're so much more, you're not angry all the time. You're not aggressive. You're not wanting to be out, you're at peace with yourself.
Yeah. Because I think when there's something going on inside us, we will direct that anger or that frustration in other places that it's not really meant for, but we have it inside us. And so other people are the kind of collateral damage, I guess.
Well, I was going to say, I think you hurt the people closest to you.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
The movie takes you through your choice to transition and the family reactions and all of those things. There's a point where you talk about being in Thailand and these places where you kind of flirt with exploring that part of yourself. This party in Staten Island that you...
I'll never forget that.
Yeah, talk to me about Staten Island. I was fascinated because I have 2 friends from Staten Island, and when they talk about it, it's not the kind of place that I imagine would have an event like this.
It's a house that's run by, I would say, a gay guy. I'm sure maybe he was a dancer or a makeup artist. Right. But he's found this niche where he's got this house, and he does bed and breakfast in there.
Right.
But if you want to go there and you're a trans person, and you can actually stay there for nothing if you want to sort of work there as a maid or something like that.
Interesting.
And also, he does these parties every so often, which was a bit of a shock to my system. I went there once before, and then I went there again at the party, the Lennox Lewis night.
Right.
And the first time I went, I just went and he sort of made me up and we just sat and spoke. The second time was he told me about the party. So I said, yeah, I'd like to come, and I went, but it was a bit creepy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It felt like the guys there purely were like, I don't like putting people in boxes, but the way they looked at you was like, it wasn't like pleasant, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It was like, and I felt it was purely going to turn into a sex party.
Right.
I'm not really, at that time, I wasn't, I'm not ready for a sex party there. Then I definitely wasn't ready.
Exactly. You really have to warm up for those. It takes a year to sort of get your head in the game. I interviewed a cookbook author a few years ago named Scotty Jeanette Mason, who is trans. And she talked to me about her journey, and she would talk to me about how she would sometimes dress up as a woman secretly, but that she stopped doing it. And I said, why did you stop? Were you afraid you would get caught? And she said, no, it was too painful to take it off. And I've thought about that ever since. This was a few years ago. It was too painful to take it off. And
during my growing up, I never really dressed up.
Right.
Because I didn't want to dress up. I may hold a dress in front of me and see what it looked like.
Right.
When I was on my own, but I would never dress up because of that issue, and I was terrified. And then, obviously, the more success I got in my boxing business, it made me even more terrified because at that time, transsexual people were destroyed in newspapers. I mean, you probably come across her in America, Caroline Crossley.
Yeah.
The Bond girl from Great Britain, and we used the same lawyer actually at certain points. So we do speak very rarely.
That's really interesting, though. Yeah.
Every so often. And she was exactly the same. I mean, her life was destroyed.
Yeah.
Her whole life. She had to leave Britain.
Yeah.
So, I haven't left Britain because my life's not destroyed. I've always had a holiday home in Portugal.
Right.
And Portugal's always been my second home, or my escape, let's say, even under the pressure when I was working. Portugal was my escape from the pressure of the boxing world.
What is the trans temperature like in Portugal now? How is the government? Are there anti-trans people in power, or is it different?
No, it seems to be. I think there's a lot more gay men in Portugal than in any other part of the community.
Right.
But I believe no, they're very accepting. People just accept you here. It's a very laid-back country.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I'm packing my bag as I speak. I want to talk about the boxing world. It's such an interesting world to witness. You fell in love with it early, right? What was it about it that you loved?
I used to get bullied in school, and I used to fight back. And the PE teacher just said to me one day, Maloney, you want to fight? And he dragged me in the gym. He said, there's the place to fight. Right. And we had a square ring, and he threw gloves at me. And for someone, I went home and told my dad, and my dad being an Irishman and loves his sport, right. He just went, okay, if that's what you want to do, maybe you won't get into so many fights in school.
Right.
He found a local boxing club and took me to it. And I don't know why. I took to it because I think it was an individual sport. Right. You just were you. You didn't have to be part of a team or fit in or anything. Yeah, we were part of a club, and you done your work on your own, and it was just, maybe it was the energy that I excelled. Yeah. So that when I would go home, I could sleep at night and I wouldn't dream as much as I used to dream, and I don't know it. I think it was escape from reality probably. And then I saw the Frazier and Ali first fight, and I just fell in love, and I thought, I want to work in boxing. I want to be a boxer. Yeah. But I was so small, and I then became a trainer at my amateur club, and it just progressed from there. Yeah. What made you good at being a trainer? I don't know. I get on with people.
Right.
It was a passion. It was never a job.
Right.
It was never a hardship.
Yeah.
You know, I just enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I can't really answer that because it was just, you know, even when I was at the top of my profession, when I signed Lennox Lewis and, you know, we went all the way, to me, people used to go to me, "Oh, you got a great job." And I would go, "It's not a job. It's a passion. It's something about it that I love."
Yeah.
So, you know, and I know I could have done the same job as Kellie, but I would never have been accepted
in that world.
And also at that time, you know, the trans people were just abused in the newspapers. As I said, there was Caroline Crossley. There was lots of others that I'd read about.
Right.
You know, some of the headlines was there was an RAF pilot in England that the papers found out about, and the headlines was "Pilot loses his undercarriage." And why would they? You know,
they think they're so clever. That's so
But it's so frightening the way they can destroy your life.
Yeah. And especially the British press, from all the celebrity interviews that I do and things like that, I feel like the British press is even way worse than the American press. That's probably been your experience, yes?
The American press was always kind to me. You know, and they loved my English accent. They loved the way that I stood up to Don King and establishment, because I was this little 5'2", cheeky guy that used to wear this Union Jack suit, and they just took to me, and I never had a problem with the American press, even when my story broke and I read some of the stuff that some of the sports writers wrote about me.
Right.
And it wasn't negative.
Yeah.
Where some of the press tried to write negative stuff. But that's life, I suppose.
That's life. When the story broke and all the coverage started coming out, how did you read a lot of it, or did you I don't want to know about it, or were you curious to see what was going on in the press?
I do read my own press, just to see what they write about me and to see if I need to correct anything.
Sure.
And because of the world I came from, the reason I went with the paper I went with, because they gave me editorial rights, they gave me picture rights, and they gave me headline rights, which had never been heard of before. And I made sure all the right wording was used. Like, I had my counsellor, my lawyers. I never wanted the word sex change used.
Right.
I wanted the word reassignment and gender dysphoria used. And they done all that, which was very good, because, you know, I didn't believe I could change my sex. You know, I accept that. And this is where there's a lot of arguments going on. I'm not a biological woman. I never will be a biological woman. But I'm a medically constructed woman, and I'm the nearest thing that I can be to a woman, not being born a female.
Yeah. You mentioned you had headline control or headline rights.
Yeah.
Because that's so rare. Because sometimes, even as a journalist, I'll write an article and then the headline will be like, "Oh, that's not right," or it'll be inaccurate or wrong, or I have never had control over headlines. So that feels like a really important thing, because the wrong headline could have ruined the whole story.
My lawyer was very impressed with my negotiation.
Yes, probably because you come from the world of boxing. I forgot how beautiful Lennox Lewis is. Like, he's just so beautiful. Like that, you know, and seeing you two together and that bond. But it took like 10 years, right, from training him until he won the title. Is that right?
89. Oh, till he became undisputed champion. Yes, but he became WC champion before that. Yes. Yeah.
What is that moment like when your fighter goes all the way after all those years? It must be a kind of euphoria.
It was amazing, because it was the first time in 100 years that we had a British undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah.
And still today, I'm the only English manager that has managed an undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
Well, because when I think of boxing, I don't think of British people being that into it. Are they? Is there a real love of it there? Is it?
I actually think boxing is bigger in England than it is in America.
Yeah.
Sports-wise, our fan base is very big. You know, I mean, when Lennox fought Holyfield, I think we took up half of Madison Square Garden of Brits that flew over there. Oh, and also when Ricky Hatton fought in Las Vegas, the Brits just invaded Las Vegas, and so did they when Lennox fought Holyfield in the rematch, which was November 1999, if I remember right. Yeah,
that's so cool that you're the only British manager that's achieved that. That's awesome. When I lose my temper, which isn't often, it can kind of not be cute at all. And my friend's like, you need to go somewhere and hit something, or you need to go break some plates. Was there something about the world of boxing that allowed you to sort of, was the physicality, like, did it help you cope with what was going on inside to be able to hit things?
Yes. And, I still train today because I've done it all my life.
Yeah.
I've got a gym in my house here, so I go to the gym here. But when I used to really get bad, I would go to the gym and just, even when I wasn't boxing, when I was a trainer or manager, I would go to the gym on my own and just work myself out.
Yeah.
I would work my frustrations, my feelings out. And the funny thing was, I would look at certain exercises that women would do to help develop, give me a shape, and I would do them if there was no one in the gym. It was.
So you were like going, "Oh, this is like how Jane Fonda gets a nice butt. I'm going to do that, but only on your own."
Yeah.
What were the exercises? Do you remember? What were they like?
There was an exercise like for breast. And I still do some of them now, like squats and not as manic as boxing. But then if someone would walk in the gym, I'd switch straight back to my boxing exercises.
That's right, because that's a thing. I mean, I don't know. Boxing is such a macho world, and there's so much bravado, right? And to be in your situation in that world, did you hear was there a lot of gay jokes, homophobia, trans jokes? Was it around a lot, or was it once in a while it would peek through, or was it just all the time?
It was always there. It was always jokes like about botty boys, faggots, puffs. I hate to use all these words, but they're words that we used.
Right. It was around all the time. It wasn't just like, that one time and then 6 weeks later another thing. It was a lot. It was like pervasive. Gosh, I would imagine thinking there's no way I could come out. I can't be this person. I have to fake it. And then you just got to the point where it's like, no, I can't do it anymore.
Well, yeah. See, I actually see, which is quite controversial, because I actually see my issue is not really an issue of the LGB.
Right.
Because I see the LGB about your sexuality.
And yes.
The T is about gender issues.
Yes.
And I think this is where there's been a lot of confusion in the world, that we haven't got this across properly.
Yeah.
Because we've all been put together, and now the war going on in Britain is about the trans. The trans umbrella. I don't know what it's like in America, but it is so big in England. It covers so many different genders that it's very confusing.
Yeah.
Now I'm with a movement that's a lot older, and we prefer to use the original word of transsexuals, which has been pushed aside for the word transgender.
Interesting.
Because transgender covers so many different genders, where transsexual covers us we have been under the transgender umbrella while we've been transitioning. Right. But now we've moved and we've transitioned. So, and I don't even refer to myself as a transsexual woman, unless I'm asked. If someone says, "Oh, you're Kellie Maloney, the transsexual woman," I'll say yes. I don't hide the fact. Right. But I don't, but I accept, as I said earlier, I will never be able to claim to be a biological woman. So I always say I'm a medically constructed woman.
Yeah, I like it. Do you feel connection to the broader gay community at large, or does it sometimes feel like there are these separate factions, or does it feel like there is a genuine connection there? Because I sometimes wonder about that in my own community.
Well, I actually got a lot of gay friends, more than I've got two in Portugal, Bob and Alan. They're like my protectors. They're lovely. They've been together 40 years, and I just think that's amazing. Yeah. And they'll always phone up to see how I am. Yeah, I take people as they come. Yeah. I don't judge people's religion, people's nationalities, people's gender. people's sexuality. I judge the person.
Yeah, I think that's the way.
Now, that's something I learned. As Frank, I never done that. I was quite hostile. And
right.
I made comments about the gay community I should never have made, but it was a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
But what I've done is I've learned. I always say I can hide from my past. I can run from my past, but I can't hide my past.
Right.
So what I've learned to do, and again, it upsets a lot of people in my own community, is if I'm misgendered, I will never jump on that person. I go, yes, I was Frank. Yes, okay. But if it's malicious, I may
right.
fight back. But a lot of people still call me Frank. A lot of the older generation men, because they're passionate about their boxing.
Right, exactly. That's how they came to know you. And if they're well-meaning people and they just get the words wrong sometimes, I think that's a great attitude to have.
So I don't hide. So what I've done is I've taken the good of Frank and mixed it with the good of Kellie, and I think I've become a much better human being. I've become more understanding, more sympathetic. Yeah. And I've been able to apologise for the mistakes I made as Frank, where Frank would never have apologised.
No, Frank never let down, never back down. It's like a very male, sometimes, like, I think certain people in our culture.
And by doing that, I it's made me a much more nicer human being, I believe. And I think we should all learn to do that, especially Donald Trump. You should learn, take a bit of the... Well, I don't think he had a good side ever, because I've met Donald.
I was thinking of this yesterday. I was like, I don't think he's been in public life 30 years. I don't think anyone can point to one kind thing he's ever done. Genuinely kind.
He tried to get involved with Lennox Lewis at one time.
Oh, really? Because he pops up for one split second in the documentary. What's the story with Lennox and Trump?
Well, no, we fought at one of his hotels in Atlantic City on one of our first shows in America. It wasn't our first show, but it was our first show before we done a massive HBO contract.
Right.
And he loved it. A few Brits had came out and everything else. And he then called me to have a meeting, and he said, I want to buy into Lennox Lewis. I'd like to buy. And I went, but you can't do that. Lennox is not for sale.
Wow.
He was like a bully. And I said, I've got deals with an American promotional company, Main Events, the Doovers, who were really nice people.
Yeah.
I said, he's got English financial backers, also part of that contract. So there's nothing of Lennox available.
Right. I can't help you. Yeah.
I can't help you. And it was like a child he's like a bully.
Was it an in-person meeting or a phone meeting? In person?
We met briefly in person.
Yeah.
But the main thing was a telephone call. It was quite funny because I was staying at my mum's council flat then, and the phone rang.
And you're talking to this alleged billionaire or whatever, and he was petulant and bullying, the same Trump we know today.
Yeah, he tried to, I got the impression that he's a guy that's always got his own way.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't get it, you'll never fight. But we fought quite a lot in America, in Atlantic City.
He actually threatened you. He actually...
Well, I wouldn't say he threatened me just verbally. He said, you'll find it hard now to fight in Atlantic City,
That sort of mob boss thing of like, wow, you got a lot of things going on over here for Lennox. I'd hate for something to happen to it. Like, that sort of veiled threat.
It was nothing like that, but it was just sort of... But then he came to every Lennox fight that was in Atlantic City after that.
Yeah, so he was a fan.
Yeah.
He was a fan. One of the stories that...
I don't think he was a fan. I think he just liked to be seen that mad way. And he was with, what was it, Marlon, was it?
Marlon Maples, yeah. I know. I can't believe I said he was a fan. He's not a fan of anything but himself. I've been paying attention these last 20 years. There was another boxer features in the documentary. Is his last name Southern?
Yes.
Darren
Southern.
Yeah, his story is heartbreaking because we see him interact with you and he's smiling and joyful. He's just such a warm, wonderful presence.
He was a lovely person. He was destined to be a world champion. I honestly, to this day, don't know what went wrong with him. And I think that was one of the things that helped me realise I've got to do something about my own. Because also, just before that, about a few months before that, my right-hand man, who was my general manager, my sort of worked day and night beside me, threw himself under the London to Brighton train. And he, again, with everything, in express trains. And I didn't realise why, I couldn't make out why he done it. And Darren, I had to have so much counselling over suicide and I knew it was in my head. And these two issues pushed me even more to get to the point where I've got to do something or I'm going to join them.
Right. Wow. It's heartbreaking. And also seeing the footage of Darren and what he seemed to be like. But is it a lesson in we never know what's really going on inside people, you know? And
we never know what's going to happen. I've got to the stage now where the past is the past. I live for today. I do not know when I wake up tomorrow. I do not know what's going to happen tomorrow until I wake up.
Yeah. After you transitioned, you had a moment of darkness.
Yes.
Looking back, what do you think that was about, or what did you what do you think about that time now?
Again, I learnt from that life is quite sacred.
Yeah.
And we're all on that verge where we could just be tipped over the edge.
Yeah.
Mine was a personal situation. I got involved with someone and nothing intimately, but I believe it could have gone that way.
Yeah.
But this person said, what about if I can change you back to Frank? I need you to be Frank to be in my life. And that was I think that must have been the thing that.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. Yeah.
Switched me over. You know, we spent a lot of time together.
Yeah.
Chatting, like sitting, cuddling, but nothing intimately.
Right. And I think the whole time you're worrying, is this going to be a thing? Are they going to be able to accept where I'm at now? And then to hear them say the words, I mean, that must have been devastating.
Yeah. Again, I learned from it. And to be honest, that situation, I've never let anyone into my life. And that's been my own choice.
Right.
I'm very happy I love my own company.
Yeah.
I have a lovely social life. I have a great group of friends, male and female.
Yeah.
And I've got a lovely family around me and I've got all my animals.
Yeah.
So I feel I don't need anyone in my life.
Right.
I actually don't know my sexuality, if I'm honest, since I transitioned. And I always say my gender as I go to bed is, my sexuality is who I wake up next to. And since 2014, when I publicly come out, I've only woke up next to my dog, so I don't know what that makes my sexuality.
You know what? I relate so much to all of this because I haven't dated anybody in quite a while. I wake up with a dog, and I'm like, I wake up to the cutest boy in the world every day.
But
I do this thing. I don't know if you relate to this. I go on dates by myself. Like, if I treat myself to like a concert or something, I don't mind going by myself. And I will literally hold my own hand as the lights go down like it's a date. Yeah. I don't know. I find it comforting or sweet or something. I don't know. I do that.
I still go out with groups and, but I don't go out. I've not been out with anyone individually now since that incident.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier in our conversation about your dreams that when you would box, you wouldn't have as many dreams. And what you said in the documentary is that in your dreams, you were always a girl. And I thought that was so, I thought it was so poignant because you can't control what you dream. You know what I mean? Like you can't direct that. You can't give them a script. And so what kind of dreams were they? Like, do you remember what you were doing in the dreams, or it was just whatever was happening, you were a girl?
I was just a girl and I fell in love, you know. I sort of think maybe I lived my childhood through my dreams instead of in real life.
Right.
Because I will never know what it was like to be a young teenage girl, to go out on your first date, to do the things that a young girl does, you know. I will never know what it was like to have a period.
Yeah.
I will never know what it was like to give birth to a child.
Yeah.
These things may sound silly, but they're also very part of something that maybe if I was born right, I would have experienced and done.
Yeah. That you had a pull to, like you they held some appeal. Interesting that you are the father of all daughters and not sons. When before you were transitioning and you would see your daughters going through these different stages, that must have been very interesting.
Yeah. And it was also, you know, I don't know, probably it's more in my book because, you know, they also brought a book out about me, frankly, Kelly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's in there, but I used to be very envious and jealous of watching my wife get dressed to go out.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I would just put on a nice pair of trousers, a shirt, a jacket, and she would be sitting there getting ready, and I would look at her. And sometimes she'd say to me, "Why are you staring at me like that?" And I'd have to go, "I'm just amazed at your beauty." And you know, and I was amazed because she was a beautiful girl, but it was also a fascination to me.
Yeah. I have a friend that he's obsessed with getting ready scenes in movies. So any movie where there's a getting ready scene is almost more exciting than the party. But it is that thing of how am I going to do my hair and what am I going to wear? And, oh, what about this necklace? And it sounds like you looked at that and was like, oh, I would like to experience it in that way.
Yeah. I suppose I tried to hide that because, you know, I'm not going to deny I did love my wife and I still do.
Yeah.
And we've built a different relationship now. We don't live together.
Yeah.
But we're divorced. But we're still very close and we're very friendly. We talk at least once a week.
Yeah.
And when I go back to England, we'll go out with the girls as a family and we'll chat. And if the girls have got any problems, we'll phone each other up and talk.
Yeah.
And she'll come on holiday to Portugal and I'll see her.
Yeah.
You know. So we have probably a platonic relationship now, but a nice relationship because I know that we can never be back together again in the way we was. It would never work now.
Tracy appears in the documentary, and she's very honest about like I wanted this to happen later, or like she's very honest, and I think that's important because I think it shows a part of the process and how it affects everybody. One of my favorite parts of the documentary is how your daughters became invested in your outfits and how you looked, and that you cannot wear that, and they became like your coaches in a way, right?
Yeah, they were very good, and they still are. You know, like the other day my mother died in January, and we obviously had all the funerals. But my mother wanted to be buried in Ireland in the family grave.
Yeah.
So the other we took her to Ireland and buried her there with her parents. And they were better now. I would turn up dressed, but my girls, they've accepted now that they have to accept me the way I am. They just say that I'm this cranky, nutty old lady. Yeah.
But I love the way they were trying to dress you and being like, nope, you're not going to wear that or anything like that. It was very funny to me. In the boxing world, you were small in stature and you were around all these giant people. When heels came into the picture, was that exciting or did it matter? Did it have any appeal to you at all? Know what?
To be honest, clothes never matter. Clothes don't make the person.
Yeah.
And this is something which, you know, I was like, when I was transitioning as well, and I was still living as Frank, I was living a double life. I went to a lot of events. And I used to look at how trans people dress, and I was mortified. Some of them would be in their 60s with a miniskirt on, heels that they could hardly walk in. And I just thought, you know, they're not. This is not really a good image. This is what gets us a bad name. So I was always conservative in my dress, and I'm a jeans person. I love jeans. Yeah. I love wearing jeans. If it's nice and sunny like we are now in this weather, I'll wear shorts during the day.
Yeah.
I'll wear a dress if I'm going somewhere nice and I need to. But I always say clothes don't make the person.
Yeah.
It's what you project is important more so than how you look.
Than the physical the package.
Yeah. Mine was never about clothes, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's why I didn't want to. It was about how I felt in myself, and when could I let Kelly out? You know, because as I said in the film, Kelly on this shoulder and Frank on this shoulder.
Yeah,
and the battle was very strong. You know.
Yeah.
very strong. And sometimes it would break me down. You know, a number of times I passed out in meetings or in my office, and I was rushed to hospital. And that was stress.
Just carrying it all inside, carrying all of that inside. After you transitioned and you heal and you're sort of through it, what became fun? What was like, what was exciting in sort of specific ways?
Just being myself.
Just being yourself. It just was a feeling that was inside.
And not having to hide.
Yeah.
Not having to look around the corner. Just being able to walk out and no matter what, anyway. And then people go, "Oh, hello, Kelly." You know, walk my dogs.
Yeah.
You know, I put a pair of jeans on, a jumper, go out, and people, you know, I don't know. It was just such a relief, you know.
Right.
I could sit in the shop and not. Oh, that's so and so. I hope he doesn't recognise me. You know, things like.
It wasn't so much what was coming into your life. It was what you were able to let go of. All of that hiding and vigilance. Yeah, the constant.
It was like a 10-ton weight coming off my shoulders. I was no longer living that lie and I was no longer keeping myself in a box. I was free.
You're free. It was a feeling inside. You went on Big Brother, the reality show, not long after you went public. Tracy thought it was too soon to go on. Are you glad you did it? The time you did it?
Yes and no. I know that's a bit of a...
No, I bet there's good things and bad things about it.
It was too soon.
Yeah.
But it also helped me. It helped my daughters because they saw how the public took to me.
Yeah.
And nice things they put on social media. And to be honest, I wasn't in the best place to be in there. There was still a lot of Frank in me, and there was still like the anger in me. And there was a I can't remember which one it was that was in there, who kept misgendering me purposely.
Ugh.
And that brought the worst out in me as well.
Of course.
And, you know, eventually they slung me out. And yeah, it was, I mean, I got so angry that I had to go at what's his name? The little guy from America that was in,
Leslie Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leslie Jordan. I was going to mention him.
We became great friends, but I had to go and I just called him a drama queen and over an issue. And I said, "I'm going to punch your lights out." And I was like, oh, and I got called up to the Big Brother house and got told off for inappropriate behaviour. And and that's where I was letting myself down.
Yeah.
But then, as my counsellor said to me, "You got to remember, Kelly, you are going through transitioning, and you are not doing it privately. You're in 2.4 million people's front rooms at prime time television.
Yeah.
And you are actually doing more for the community than anyone else has done for a long time, because you are showing the struggle that we go through to get to where you want to get to."
Yeah. I mean, shows like that are controversial and some people like them, some people don't, but they spend time with you. So maybe they see an ugly moment one day, but the next episode you see a wonderful moment, or they get more of they're not just seeing one headline or one quote. They're seeing you interact.
They edit it to suit themselves.
Of course they do. Yeah. So there's that.
They showed more bad side of me than good side.
How long after you transitioned was this show?
About 8 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Wow. But you know what? It's kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off. It's like, okay, that's going big.
Well, it was against the advice of my oldest daughter.
Yeah.
And Tracy's advice. And my 2 young daughters were, yeah, do it. Because, they're into all that social media. I had never watched Big Brother before.
Right.
I don't watch reality television.
Right. So they called you up and said, "Hey, do you want to do this show?"
Well, I spoke to an agent.
Yeah.
My lawyers appointed an agent to look after me.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was going through a very messy divorce. I was going through a lot of problems, and I knew I needed and the money was quite reasonable.
Yeah.
And I had to take my daughter out of school and put her back into a private school from a public school because she was getting abused. So the fee helped all of that.
Yeah.
Another reason.
I remember Leslie Jordan. I knew him a little bit. He actually did this podcast pretty early on, and he mentioned the money. Like he needed a payday. But I love seeing the two of you together, and I love Leslie, so I just loved seeing him pop up there.
Yeah, do you know after I got booed out of the house because he went out before me.
Right.
We met and went for a lovely dinner, and I took my youngest daughter, and she fell in love with him, and he fell in love with her.
I love that. He has amazing stories. He has a story about everyone and everything. And so I loved seeing him pop up, and I love that you guys got to be friends.
Yeah, it was such a shame when I read about the car crash.
Yeah, horrible.
Yeah.
The film itself, when did the documentary become like, when did you officially start shooting it? Because I know there's a lot of archival footage in there from before, but when did it come to you?
Well, the idea came up during COVID. What happened was, the production company that done it, they done one on Lennox Lewis. I can't remember what it was called. And I was actually in America doing my talking tour.
Yeah.
They wanted to interview me, so they came to interview me, and we were chatting. And Rick, I think he's the main guy. Rick, he's the main man. Rick, he got chatting. He said, "Kellie, you're amazing. You're so open and honest. Would you agree to do a documentary on your life?" And I went, "Well, I've had one done in England," I said, "on television." He said, "Yeah, we've looked." He said, "But we'll do more in depth about your boxing, about everything." He went, "It's such an amazing story." And then, so I agreed to do it. Yeah. Because I also thought it would help people realise that we are human beings, and we're not a threat to you. We're not going to run with your children like Donald Trump would like to say, or other people would like to say. We're not going to. There's a lot of things that's so wrong, and there's a lot of things that I don't think I don't think trans women, transsexual should be allowed to take part in women's sport. Yeah. Again, that's a very controversial subject, and the reason I do that is because I've lived and worked in sport.
Yeah,
and I know how much strength I've lost. And I think, okay, let them take part in the sport. But if they win, it doesn't count, and their time doesn't count as on the record, there are other ways of doing it. We can go to the gym. We can
right.
do this. But it is a bit, unfortunately, I've always lived with controversy.
Right. No, of course. And that's a thorny issue. Like, for me personally, it's not my world, but two of my values are letting people be who they are, and fairness. Fairness is a real value for me. And so when I look at that, I'm like, is it fair? Like, it's hard. These are hard things. So,
and again, a lot of people in my community don't agree with my views on that.
Yeah.
It's like, I believe once you've transitioned, as I said earlier, you shouldn't be under the trans umbrella. We should be under, maybe call it a transsexual umbrella, or a medically constructed, and that refers to trans men as well, because I think, it's easy for them to get around, but they're gonna, they're under attack as well. Yeah. It's and I don't agree with trans men giving birth to babies, because if you want to be a man, you don't want to give birth. Why would you want to give birth?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, there's so many different people and different experiences and
experiences. Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. These are my own opinions.
Right.
I'm not, and people can judge me by what I say, or they cannot. Yeah. But I just feel that we have to get it. If we want to be accepted, we have to accept certain rules.
Yeah.
And we have to accept. I remember when I was a young boxing promoter, I was very rebel, and I was very, as I say, very always questioning the authorities and not agree. So I got a phone call from the general secretary and asked to go to a meeting. So I went to the meeting, and they said to me, "You're a very good young promoter, and you've got you've got a future.
Right.
But if you don't want to follow the rules of this club, take yourself to another club." Now, I've used them rules since I've trained, because I believe I'm a woman. Well, I know I'm a woman, right. But I want to be seen as a woman.
Right.
I will live with it by the codes of a woman. If I still had my manly bits, I would not go into a woman's changing room, and I never did during my. I would use the toilets because they've got cubicles, so no one sees.
Right.
But I wouldn't go into a woman's changing room just in case.
Right.
I slipped up and they saw that I had something between my legs that shouldn't be there.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And
so
again,
you work it out for yourself and what feels right to you.
Wrong. I could be wrong.
Right.
And I know a lot of people won't agree with that, but that's how I am.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't argue with someone of their transition and they want to keep their middle bit. But if they want to keep their middle bit, then they've got to accept they may not be welcome in certain women's places.
Sure. Interesting. Yeah. When you transitioned and came out and it was public, who surprised you in their reactions? Were there people that were more supportive than you thought they would be, or?
No, do you know what? There was people I thought who would have been supportive that dropped me like a brick.
Really?
Yeah. Some people that I'd done a lot of work with and helped them in their own career to move forward. And I won't mention the name of one person who had a major drug problem and could have lost everything, except for I helped them through it.
Right.
And they just dropped me like a brick.
And that was it. Like people in the boxing world.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Were there people that did surprise you, or?
Yeah, there was a couple that surprised me. Yeah. One of the great stories I will tell you. I have a friend called Ray, and we grew up together.
Right.
And it's a well-known fact that I'm a fanatical. You call it soccer in America, so I'll use the word soccer.
Yeah. A
soccer fan. And I go to this club, which has quite got a bad reputation, but we're owned by an American chairman from Boston.
Right.
Millwall. And we went there as kids and we grew up together. So just before my story broke, I picked like 10 or 12 really good friends that were close to me that I knew I had to tell before the story broke.
Right.
So I picked 6, and then I gave 6 to my daughter. I said, well, you tell them because I think they meant. So I phoned Ray and told him, and Ray went, I don't believe it. I've seen you with some of the most beautiful women in the world. I went, Ray, never judge a book by its cover, Anyway, he went, well, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. I don't think we can meet, but if you want to talk to me, I'll talk to you on the telephone. I went, I understand that, Ray. Anyway, so we talked on the phone a couple of times, and then the next time I went, he went, Kelly, he went, I want to meet you for a coffee. I went, are you sure? He went, yeah, I think we need to have a chat. So I said, okay. So he said, meet me in the city, because he's got his own. So I went up to the city and we had coffee and we were chatting. He went, I don't know. I've been speaking to my wife and she said, what is wrong with you? Kelly is still the same person. She still likes her football. She still likes her boxing, what you like. She's been your friend for a good 30 years. What about if she'd have lost her leg or something else, and you'd still be a friend, wouldn't you?
Right.
And he went, yes. He went, so why are you not her friend now? And he went, I'm sorry the way I treated you. If you want to go football with me, we'll go football. If you want to go out with me, but I don't want to go shopping with you.
He did have a few things. Did you go watch football with him?
Yeah.
Have you been?
It's great. I've been to his house. He invites me around to his house. And, I'm very good friends with his wife.
Yeah.
Denise. It's funny how people deal with it.
Yeah.
And then I had a really good friend that I grew up with that we boxed together and everything else. And, I didn't tell him. I told his wife, and his wife's lovely. And she said to me, and I said, look, I understand if he can't deal with it. I said, it's not an issue. I said, because I know that some people can't. She went, you and him have been friends since you were at school.
Yeah.
You went to the same boxing club. You've helped each other. You've always spoken. If he doesn't want to agree with it, I'll kick him out of my house. And again, we are great friends with the whole family.
Yeah. But she laid it down. I like that. Good for her.
Yeah.
Early in the film, you talk about these ideas of fate, and you talk about everything happens for a reason. Are these things that you still sort of believe? I don't know that there's a religion connected to what you're saying, but it sounds like a sort of a belief in something bigger, right? Or that there's some reason for things.
I'm a Catholic. I was brought up a Catholic.
Right.
I still practice my religion. I took a break from it.
Yeah.
But I took a break. I don't know why. Maybe because, I don't know, some of the things. But then I came back to my religion. But my mother's always been very religious. And I remember when I told my mum, and I said, look, Mum, you know, I may not come to church with you anymore. Because I used to go to church with my mum to keep her company as well.
Yeah.
And I went because, you know, I'm not sure the Catholic faith will accept me.
Right.
She went, well, let me tell you this. I will tell those priests that you are my daughter, and I will tell them if they do not accept you, that they are not men of God, because God has never said that he doesn't accept anybody. God has said he accepts everyone, you know. And I went, okay. And so I started going back to church with my mum, and eventually I got back, you know, and I go to the church quite regularly now. I pray. I do believe there is a God.
Yeah.
I do believe everything happens for a reason, and I do believe God has planned your life for you. And I think he took this journey for a specific reason. Again, people might think I'm nuts, but that's my belief.
No, I think it's beautiful. And your mother is in the film, and she's so sweet. And so to hear this other side of her, where she's like, "I'm going to tell those priests if they don't accept you."
Oh, you did not argue with that 5'2" Irish woman. I can assure you.
It moves me so much, that story. And also, your brother has an evolution, right? He's at first he's more difficult, but he seems to warm, right? How's that going?
No, we're back to the bad side.
All right. You know, these things change; they ebb and flow. When you started telling your story and in these speaking things, do you hear from people who you've helped? And
Yes.
How do they reach out to you? They talk to you in person, or do you get letters? Like, what's that like?
I will always say, whenever I do my talking job, I never rush off after. I always stay, you know, and I will always say, if anyone wants to come and talk to me, I'm here for a while. And I've had people come up and I've given my phone number, or I've given my email, or I said, you can follow me on not Instagram. Yeah, Instagram. Sorry, yeah. Or on my Facebook account. And I will always respond. And I do respond to everybody that writes to me or calls me.
How does that feel? Is it gratifying in a way?
Yeah, it makes me, that goes back to the part where I think I was meant to go on this journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine during Big Brother, there must have been a lot of, would you hear from people in the trans community or people that wanted to?
When I came out, I did, but you're not allowed to contact the outside world once you're in the Big Brother.
Yeah, so it would have all happened afterwards, or you're kind of in a bubble. Let's remind people how they can see the movie. It's called Knockout Blonde, and it's on video on demand. Is that correct?
I believe so. Amazon Prime, Comcast. I'm not sure. Another one called Direct something, but I'm not sure of the American market.
Yeah, Direct TV.
I know Direct TV, yes, and it's. I don't know how well it's doing.
Yeah,
but I actually had I will read it to you. I actually had a message from an American lady.
Oh, I love it.
Who watched it.
I love it.
I think she met me on one of my trips in America.
Yeah.
Let me just find it and because I send it to the hi lady, I bought your doc last night, and even though I kind of knew your story from you sharing and talking to me, I must say, wow, I cried watching it. And then I saw your Willie laughing out loud. You have beautiful daughters inside and out. I'm so privileged to have met you. You are a very strong woman. And I didn't know Lennox was from Britain. And then I sent back a message to her saying, well, I've now lost my Willie. It's now been removed. And she said, I bet you're pleased.
That's amazing. That's right. There's one shot where you're just walking around a hotel room or whatever, and it's full frontal.
I was adamant that they should take that out, and they were adamant that should stay in. And it came to and they went, if it doesn't stay in, we will not make the movie. So,
it was that big a deal. Wow.
Now you can hear my dogs.
Yeah, I love that. So the footage itself, what was that footage from? Because it was way before transition.
I didn't even realise it was done. That was a documentary they were filming when we were preparing for a fight, and the camera was in my room when they came in early one morning. Yeah. And I was just coming out of the shower and I didn't realise they were there.
Yeah. And do you have an Instagram?
Sorry?
Do you have an Instagram account?
Yes.
Are you? I want to follow you on that. What's the name of your account?
Because I don't know if it's Kellie F. Maloney or Kellie Maloney.
Yeah.
Let me just have a look. Instagram. Oh, I've got two actually. One's called Kellie Maloney.
Yeah.
And the other one is called Yogi. Hold on, where's it gone? Instagram. Let me have a look. What Yogi? Yeah, one is Kellie Maloney, and it has a picture of me there, and then the other one is Yogi. I think Yogi. You can tell I'm not very.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. We'll find it.
Yogi the Russian. Yogi the Russian.
Yogi the Russian. Okay, I like that.
He's a black Russian terrier, so I call him Yogi Bear. But he on Instagram he's called Yogi the Russian. I don't know why, but most of it comes up on that instead of the Kellie Maloney one.
Interesting. All right, I like it. Who's been your most surprising fan? Have you ever heard from anyone famous or met somebody that you found out they were a fan of what you were doing or what you were about?
Well, I've had a lot of soccer players have written to me nice messages because everyone knows I'm a big soccer fan, and I've had quite a few people surprise me saying, again, telling me how brave I was, and I have to say to them, I'm not really brave, but I appreciate you contacting me. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Here's my final question. You talked about how you felt like you were meant to tell this story or to be on this journey and to talk about your life. What do you think the lesson is of your journey? What have you learned that you like to pass on to people just about life in general?
Not to be afraid of who you are and to be honest.
Yeah.
Honesty is the best policy.
Yeah.
Eventually you will find yourself and you will find that, I find people so much more acceptant if you're honest, and I know I'm an open book. I've been told by people, Kellie, you're too open, you're too honest. But I just feel for me, that is the best way forward.
Yeah. Right. And you know what it's like to hide things. You know the price you pay. And so the lessons that you've probably learned are...
But the most important thing is to never do this journey alone. And remember, the journey is not just you. It's about the people that your family, your work colleagues, your friends. So a lot of people go on this journey with you. So it's not all about you. So don't always self-pity yourself.
Right.
Learn to listen to other people about the journey. They may not agree with you.
Yeah.
Or they may agree with you. But no one has the right to deny your existence.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for this conversation. I love talking to you. I hope maybe our paths will cross someday if you come to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And good luck with the movie and everything else you're up to.
Let Justin know when you're putting and I will link it to all my social media.
I love it. It'll go up in a week or two, sometime during Pride Month.
Okay.
Oh, one final question, since I mentioned it. Does the idea of Pride Month, does it resonate with you? Does it mean something to you?
I feel pride has become too commercialized.
Right.
Pride used to be protests.
Right.
And I believe that should be the aim of pride.
Right.
Again, we should now be the way the LGBT community fought for acceptance.
Yeah.
With pride events, we should now be fighting for the transgender community with pride events.
I agree. And also there's so much more to fight against now with the way the governments are going and stuff like that. There's a real, I feel it in my community. Yeah.
But I also say this, we shouldn't just wait for Pride Month to come out and be open. We should be proud of who we are 365 days of the year.
I think that's beautiful. Awesome. This was a pleasure, Kellie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If I move to Portugal, I'll reach out and let you know.
Yeah, reach out to me. Come and see me. Yeah.
I would love it.
Come and see what Portugal's like. You're welcome to come and stay with me for a week or so.
Oh, that is so sweet. I appreciate it. Right.
Bye.
Thanks again to Kellie Maloney. Check out the documentary Knockout Blonde. It is now available on video on demand. Okay, so this happened. There's a lot of people in Los Angeles now that are in the film and television industry that have a lot of anxiety. Work has slowed way, way down. It feels ominous and bad and like everybody I know. But once in a while, something in that world comes together in a beautiful way. And that's what happened last week. I got to go to a screening at the Academy Museum of the movie The Sugarland Express, starring Goldie Hawn, and Goldie was there in person. And she's one of my very, very favorite actors. Around the time of Private Benjamin, I kind of fell in love with her. There was a Newsweek cover that said "Good as Goldie" with her picture on it, and I remember cutting it out and putting it on my bulletin board. And I would go see all of her movies like the first weekend they came out for the next 10 years. It was like we were going steady, and she was my favorite. I just loved her. I thought she was funny and beautiful and radiated a kind of joy. And so I was very excited to see her speak. And her big pet cause is mindfulness. She started a foundation to teach mindfulness to young people, to help them manage their lives better. And it's called Mind Up. And so I was very interested to hear her talk, not just about the movie, but just her whole philosophy. And I've just been a fan for so long. So she said some really interesting things, and I write about it in more detail on my Substack, and I also talk about it on the Substack. But I will say this. She talked about winning the Oscar for Cactus Flower for her first movie. She wasn't at the Oscars. She was actually working on another movie, and she never thought she would win. She didn't think she had a chance. And then she did win. And then the interviewer asked her if she had expectations after that, or she would also ask her, like, did you take the Sugarland Express to try to get away from typecasting? And in both of those cases, Goldie sort of shut down the premise a little bit by saying, no, I don't have any expectations, and I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. Like, she was just living and doing her thing and trying to serve the project. Like, she wasn't worried about the results of things. And I think that's very reflective of her attitude throughout life, and also very reflective of her interest in sort of mindfulness and being in the moment. She describes her acting style as very spontaneous. She can never do it the same way twice. She's very alive in the moment. And so all of these sort of calculated show business things, that's not how she rolls, and it hasn't ever been how she rolls, although she is very smart about the business stuff. When she was talking about Private Benjamin, she talked about how she ended up producing it because they didn't want to pay a producer, somebody like a Ray Stark or somebody, just to take a big chunk of money when they could do it themselves, and they were already doing it anyway. So there's a savvy side to her, but a sort of mindful kind of not worrying about the result, not worrying about what people think, being in the moment, being joyful. That really came through, and I was so inspired by it. So magical night at the Academy Museum, and the movie was great. Steven Spielberg's first feature film, and he directed the hell out of it. I'd never seen it before. I thought it was going to be sort of a smaller scale story, but it's this true story about this young couple in Texas who kind of, the wife busts the husband out of jail to try to get their kid back, and it's like a million cop cars chasing them, kind of like Keystone Cops, and there's more set pieces involved. It was a bigger production than I thought based on the synopsis, and Spielberg really, you could see his genius at where the cameras were and how the things were staged, and the performances were great. Anyway, what a terrific night. So that's enough for this week. I want to let you know that if you want to hear more about Goldie, go to my Substack or my Patreon. I go into more depth there, and I even play a snippet of tape that I recorded. So there's that. All right. Shout out to Oscar Rosario for mixing the episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Placement Music. We'll catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye.